Welcome ladies and gentlemen, Tactical Lich here. Today we are looking at a battle happened on the Ladies Quest 2 tournament, which is hosted by the ODM clan, who very generously shared access to the replay files to me, allowing me to pick them up and cast them for your entertainment. But unfortunately, due to the Chaos Dwarf DLC, most of these replay files will be obsolete before I can actually cast them. Still, I'll try to cast as many replays as possible before the new patch comes. In this battle, we have Curiel playing as the Beastmen and Bjorn playing as the Dark Elves. Now for the army builds here, Curiel went for some niche units here. In the front line, the standard Ungor Spears mixed in with Ungor Herds backed up by a whole bunch of Ungor Raiders. For mobility, 3 Centigors with throwing axes providing a lot of armor-piercing firepower, a single Chaos Warhound and a single Razor Gore Herd, which can provide some nice armor-piercing damage, decent for counteracting enemy heavy cavalry or chariot units. The backbone of this build is a single Butchers of Kalkengard unit, providing an elite monstrous infantry force with their melee stats, high leadership, and more importantly, their regeneration, allowing them to endure prolonged fighting. But now the single entities is where the niche stuff comes in. First of all, a Jabber's Life. They used to be really good when they first came out due to their broken charge animation and their Mortis Engine effect, making them an absolute nightmare for infantry blobs. Unfortunately though, the activation condition is quite harsh, requiring the enemy units to be lower than 50% leadership before it affects them. It will be interesting to see how the Jabber's Life fares against the Dark Elves. Can the charge animation still carry it? We shall wait and see. As for the Beastmen characters, Morgur the Shadowgave leading the army with his Chaos Spawn summons and also a Brave Shaman of Wild with no traitor kin. He is carrying Brave Scream, which is a great armor-piercing, infantry-clearing breath spell. And then there's also Devolve. Not only can it reduce enemy speed and melee stats, but also that leadership reduction will synergize well with the Jabber's Life, helping it to activate the Mortis Engine effect earlier. On the other side, Bjorn is coming in with 3 Cheese Runner chariots. You kind of expect them when you play against the Dark Elves anyway, since they are such an effective anti-large skirmishing force. The Scourge Runners are also supported by some Black Ark Corsairs with hand bows. They're deployed way ahead of their own battle lines, possibly readying themselves for some skirmishing action. At the back, a lot of mobility in the form of Dark Riders, 3 of them in fact supported by a front line of Bleak Swords mixed in with Dread Spears, very standard deployment really, and then more Bleak Swords on the flanks, a single Sisters of Singing Doom for some elite melee power, plus their rampaging effect. Leading the Dark Elf army, unsurprisingly, the Witch King himself, Malekith on Seraphon, the meta legendary lord who can heal cap himself every time, coming in with nothing other than Soul Stealer and Power of Darkness. This is basically a combo to spam as many Soul Stealer as possible to do damage and also heal cap Malekith himself. Anyways, that's it for the army builds. Now let's get this show on the road. With the presence of so many Cheese Runner chariots, the Beastman really wants to hold back their monsters to avoid all those anti-large firepower. Instead, the Ungor Spears and Ungor infantry will just push forward, absorbing the shots from the Cheese Runners right now. I assume they are now on fire at will and are automatically dispensing their ammo into the closest enemy target. They need to stop doing that as they are wasting their precious ammo into some cheap chaff. They switch their target to the Brave Shaman, but I still think that is a mistake as the foot characters are usually hard to hit with any missiles other than direct fire bullets or lasers. The Scourge Runners really need to conserve and ration their ammo as they only have 20-ish shots in total for every single unit. That's 5 shots per chariot model and cannot be wasted on infantry chaff. Though the Dark Elves do have some skirmishing options to counter the Ungors. Black Ark Corsairs continuously chipping away the health of the Ungor herds using their hand bows. Very effective use of the skirmishing infantry here, especially the light armored of the Beastmen infantry will allow them to take more damage from the Black Ark Corsairs. On the flank here, Butchers of Kalkengard charging straight for these poor Bleak Swords who are unbraced, and a downhill charge as well, doing massive impact damage, plying straight through that unit, obliterating half their HP. Some Dark Riders attempted a cheeky charge on some weakened Ungors, but they are now clobbered by a countercharge from the Jabber's Life, while at the flank here, the Black Ark Corsairs are continuously being pushed back by the Ungor Spears. The Centigors are moving forward as well, chipping away the health of any enemy units with their armor-piercing fire. Now the Bleak Swords are pushing in, hoping to go for the Angor Spears, but a very nice bait and switch here. Curio pulling back the Angor Spears while charging in the Centigors with throwing axes. Now they are not the greatest melee combatant, but with the charge bonus they can still do some nasty work against an unbraced light infantry like these Bleak Swords. Bjorn tries to countercharge with Dark Riders, but then Curio pushed in with the Angor Spears, Angor Infantry and Razorgore Herd, screening away enemy melee units, allowing the Centigors to pull back to relative safety. Now over here on the other flank, Jabberslide plowing straight into the Dread Spears, but unfortunately Malakiv comes in for a counter charge and basically beaten it up pretty bad. So a Chaos Bond summon will be dropped into the fray, using their mass to pin down Malakiv and also charging them into the Sisters of Singing Doom. They have massive weapon strength at 140, making them optimal for dealing with the lightly armored Witch Elves. However, on this flank right now, the Beastmen infantry are faltering. The Butchers took massive damage from Seraphon's breath and were forced to pull back, which allows the Dark Riders and all the Bleak Swords and whatnot to pick off the tattered Beastmen units. On the other side, the Jabberslide has moved on to this flank here, plowing straight into the Black Corsairs with the help of some armor-piercing Razorgore Herds. The other Black Corsairs are shooting at the Jabberslide, but they are now under fire from the Angor Raiders as well. At the same time, the Jabberslide pulls away from the first Corsair and ram head-on into these Dark Elf scums who dare shoot him in the face. And over here, Malakiv will be dropping a breath attack into the Angor Raiders. Not sure whether he's aiming at the Butchers or the Angor Raiders, but in the end, straight up routed off the Angor Raiders and did some chip damage to the Butchers of Kalkengard, lowering their melee attack as well with the noxious gas. After debuffing the Butchers, Malakiv dives down himself. With the support of the Bleak Swords, this should be a decent engagement for the Dark Elves, but this does open up Malakiv to the skirmishing fire from the Centigors with throwing axes. More Angor Spears are flooding in to support this fight, while the Butchers will try to move away from the fight. No, instead they will actually stay in the fight and beat down Malakiv with the help of the Centigors' cover fire. On the other side of the battlefield, Jabberslide trying to go for the Scourge Runners possibly, but then pinned down by the Dark Riders. This allows the Scourge Runners to fire at the Jabberslide, but unfortunately, the Cheese Runners are completely out of ammo. Without the missile support, once again the Dark Riders are clobbered by the Jabberslide. All the damage drops their leadership below 50%, and now being slowly drained away by the Aura of Madness, the Mortis Engine effect from the Jabberslide. Now over here, Malakiv has pulled away from the engagement, as this is not a great engagement for him, being surrounded by armor-piercing Minotaurs who have great melee stats and being shot by Centigors with throwing axes. At the back here, the Dread Spears and Scourge Runner Chariots are being pushed away by a combination of Centigors and the Chaos Spawn summon. This one final Scourge Runner Chariot also ran out of ammo, so there's no more anti-large firepower for the Dark Elves. Angor Spears are also pouring in to surround these Dread Spears, which will be promptly routed off. Then the Chaos Bounds, the Angor Spears and the Centigors will continue to chase down the routed Dark Elves. Without the anti-large firepower, the Jabberslide is a lot less threatened, though it is already running low on health and needs to be careful with the engagement. Though it seems that the Beastman player, Curio, isn't exactly focusing his attention over here. You can see that they are really trying hard to break away the Scourge Runners, but the Scourge Runners are just not taking much damage in this melee fight. And instead, the Beastmen will be pulled away from this fight here as Malakiv is closing in and they are scared of this massive Black Dragon. But it seems that Malakiv has second thoughts, while the Jabberslide is munching on some Scourge Runners, doing massive damage with their great armor-piercing attacks. On the side, the Black Corsairs are unloading the remainder of their ammo into the Beastmen before being forced into melee combat. We'll be fast forwarding a bit here as Malakiv drops in, trying to hit on the Jabberslide, but the Jabberslide simply charges away with the charge animation, leaping around the battlefield left, right and center. Finally, Malakiv drops in and also drops a Soul Stealer on the other side of the battlefield. It hit a few key Beastmen targets, including the Brave Shaman, Morgor the Shadowgate and some of the Centigors. Unfortunately for him, Morgor does have spell resistance, plus with his regeneration he can simply recover whatever lost HP he had. At the same time, it seems that Malakiv's attempt on the Jabberslide has failed, as the Jabberslide simply charges out of the Dark Elf infantry surround, once again using its mass advantage and the broken charge animation to bully its way through all those enemy units. The poor Bleak Swords, after being cut down by some Butchers, immediately routed as the Jabberslide slams into their backs. Malakiv dives down once again with Power of Darkness active, trying to squeeze out more Winds of Magic for more Soul Stealer and healing. With his massive charge bonus and weapon strength, he is beating down those butchers of Kalkengard. The remaining Dark Elf infantry, including the Bleak Swords and Blackguard Corsairs, are fighting as well, but unfortunately for the Druchii, their leadership is too low to stand in front of a terror-inducing monster, the Jabberslith. Now, the Jabberslith might be routed, but it is still doing damage, all thanks to his Aura of Madness. As long as there's enemy units in melee range of the Jabberslith, this passive ability will be active. Actually managed to take off a bit more health from the routing Corsairs. But then the Jabberslith routed into a different direction, leaving the Dark Elf infantry alone. Another Soul Stealer is dropped into the blob here. This heals up Malekith and at the same time drains away what little health left on the Butchers of Kalkengard. They might be regenerating, but unfortunately it does not match the damage from Soul Stealers. With only 2 unit models left, the Butchers will soon rout, but before that, using the last bit of their strength, mustering their courage, charging straight for the Scourge Runners, while over here another Brave Scream chipping away the health of the Bleak Swords, and Malekith is just simply avoiding combat right now, as all these Centigors with throwing axes would be a great threat to his large hitbox. And at the back here, Scourge Runners, seeing that the Butchers are so low in terms of HP, decided, you know what, I'll just countercharge you. And that routs off the Butchers with only 2 models left, and the Scourge Runners are free to do whatever they want. Now, Morgr the Shadowgave, the tanky lord. He's not only regenerating, but he's also a foot lord, so that means he can get knocked down and enter the invincible mode. Malekith charges him from the skies, trying to snipe him out, but he simply pushes back Morgr the Shadowgave and knocks him over. Thus a few seconds wasted and a few more seconds for the Centigors to chuck their throwing axes at him. At the same time, Curiel decided to use his Centigors with throwing axes rather aggressively. Seeing that the Blackguard Corsairs and the Bleak Swords are so low in leadership, he just kind of charges in the Centigors, trying to use that rear charging penalty, dealing a heavy blow to these already faltering Dark Elf infantry and overwhelm them with a bit of shock damage. This triggers a chain rout, causing the Dark Elves to rout one after the other. As you can see here, friends, routing that adds on more leadership debuffs to surrounding units, and all these Dark Elf units are indeed broken off. The Centigors are over chasing Malekith right here, as the regrouped Bleak Swords are holding them back, while Morgr the Shadowgave will be pushing onto the Bleak Swords, hoping to pin them down so that these Centigors can freely retreat. Malekith, not sure what he's trying to do here, as he does not want to stay around this Beastman formation. There's just too much anti-air firepower for a dragon. Bleak Swords now finally being routed, while on the far field, the Scourge Runners chased off the Butchers of Kalkengard. Malekith as well, shattering the Jabberslith simply by being close to the weakened Beastman monster. So we'll be just kind of going through a bit of fast forward, waiting for both armies to regroup. That said, the Dark Elves don't have much to regroup anyways. Seeing that the Beastmen are forming up in a tight formation, hoping to defend themselves, Malekith will be dropping in a Soul Stealer, draining the health of a lot of these Beastmen remaining units. The Cheese Runner chariots are charging into the Ungors, while the Beastmen are trying to tie them down in melee combat. But unfortunately, the Scourge Runners can simply plow through. Malekith also drops down, routs off the Centigors with throwing axes, and this time will be returning back into the middle fight, where the Scourge Runners are still charging around unimpeded. The other Scourge Runners is completely routed, only 1 model left and 95 HP. Probably will not be coming back. But Malekith has his eyes on Morgr the Shadowgave. He is tanky indeed, but he still takes damage. To save Morgr, the Brave Shaman casts Devolve onto Malekith, reducing his melee attack, his speed, and also his leadership. And don't forget that Morgr has poison attacks, which further debuffs Malekith. He's poisoned, his damage output is reduced, while the Scourge Runners, still trying to run through all those Beastman units, are hunted down by the Centigors with throwing axes. If they manage to check out some throwing axes in point blank range in melee, then perhaps it will be a bit more effective than simply trying to hit them in melee. Another Soul Stealer is dropped into this blob, somehow covering a few units here, covering this unit, but unfortunately the Soul Stealer bug is still there and they are simply not affected by the spell at all. Unlike the Ungors who are now routed, the Centigors actually got preserved in terms of hit points and are now charging straight into Malekith, supporting their Liege Lord against this fight. Also, Morgr simply shrugs off all the damage from the Soul Stealer. Instead, the more vulnerable units to Soul Stealers are the Centigors, as they are quite low in HP and leadership. With the Centigors' health running low, they will be pulling back, trying to expand some of their ammo, while Morgr and the supporting infantry will still be tanking against Malekith. The good news is that Malekith is running quite low in health, down to around 2500 HP. Morgr the Shadow Gave, unfortunately though, he doesn't have the armor piercing to quickly work down Malekith. Instead, he needs to rely on the Centigors with throwing axes, who are now charging into melee combat trying to support Morgr, who will definitely be beat down by Malekith in a one-on-one fight. At the same time, the other Centigor with throwing axes was able to skirmish away, chugging their armor-piercing firepower into Malekith. But then some Scourge Runners regrouped and silenced these Centigors with throwing axes. Though very unlucky for Bjorn, Malekith took a few big hits from Morgr. Seeing this opportunity, Kuriel decided, you know what, if the Centigors can't fire, I can just charge them into melee, and the Centigors are going for it. And with that, army losses is hit and victory shall belong to Kuriel and his beastmen. GG to both Kuriel and Bjorn for this really close game. Both are very skillful players, and in the end, the battle could have gone either way according to who RNGesus favors more. For the army performances, let's have a quick rundown here. Centigors did amazing with their armor-piercing firepower. They were basically the most important unit in working down Malekith here. The Jabberslave unfortunately didn't do much here. The most important thing about the unit is their disruptive charges, but there's not a lot of stuff to disrupt other than these two Black Ark Corsairs. So in the end, with the harsh activating ability of the Mortis engine, in fact the Aura of Madness, the Jabberslave struggled to drain away the health of the Dark Elf units, since elves usually have high leadership and the ability was not able to activate most of the time. For the rest of the army here, Butchers of Kalkengard didn't do much damage, took some nasty hits from the breath attack of Malekith, so suffered a lot of damage and unable to do much in return. Ungors, they did okay. They were mostly there to screen out enemy units and also just tie down Dark Elves in general. The Ungor Raiders, they were ran down by a combination of Dark Elf infantry and cavalry, while the Warhounds, they got routed off early by the Dark Riders, I assume. The Razorgore Herds though did some pretty solid damage, as they do have some devastating charge attacks, especially against the Black Ark Corsairs, who rely so much on their armor to protect them, while the armor-piercing Razorgores would be punching through their protection. For the characters, Brave Shaman does not have Traderkin, so the damage output is rather low here, with only Brave Scream. While Morgr the Shadow Gave did some decent damage, put in a few big hits on Malekith in the end and winning the game for the Beastmen. Now for the Dark Elves here, Malekith kind of expects this anyways. 4,400 gold worth of damage value, and remember, there's nothing on the Beastmen roster that regenerates other than the Butchers of Kalkengard, so a lot of those damage is very solid stuff against the Beastmen, while the Scourge Runner Chariots, only one of them earned back their own value, the other two not so much despite expanding all their ammo. Putting them on auto fire in early game definitely hurt their damage output in total. The Sisters of Singing Doom being dumpstered by a bunch of Chaos Bones and dragged down by the Ungor infantry not doing much damage, while the Black Ark Corsairs had some really nice skirmishing action going. These guys cut through a whole bunch of Ungor chaff. Their heavy armor does mitigate the damage from the Ungor Raiders, Ungor Herds and whatnot, so the Black Ark Corsairs can be a solid pick against the Beastmen. Dark Riders didn't really do much here, being dragged down by a bunch of Ungors, perhaps being dragged down by the Butchers of Kalkengard in melee combat as well. And don't forget those poor Dark Riders that got sacrificed to tie down the Jabberslave, and the Jabberslave just clobbered them in melee combat. Bleak Souls and Dread Spears did okay, but not a lot of damage against the overwhelming numbers of the Beastmen army. And that's it for today's tournament spotlight. Due to time constraints, I wasn't able to cast all of the battles in this match. However, I'll be casting more tournament games in the future, so be sure to subscribe to the channel and keep an eye out for new video uploads. That's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.